Hello everyone, it's time for third episode of Road to Super Bowl Season 3. Today we are going to talk about Giants who, despite their name, do not necessarily require an ending hero to defeat them. Unfortunately, for a couple of years, that's the case for them. But what was 2024 for them and what awaits them in 2025? Let's find out when we take this journey and go on the road to Super Bowl for New York Football Giants. Let's go. We start by take a look at what they made of their draft picks in 2024. Their first pick was Malik Neighbors, and I absolutely love this pick, not only because I believe that Malik is going to be an exceptional player, but because they also choose not to, in my opinion, overdraft QBs that were still on the board, like Michael Penix, Bo Nix, and JJ McCarthy. Though you might argue with like Bo Nix, really good performance with Denver, and even Michael Penix showing a lot of quite a positive stuff in his late stint with the Falcons, they might have found their guys. But I was pretty clear about, for Giants, it's going to take a while before they will be relevant, and putting a QB into that system where offensive line was in question and you had pretty much no offensive weapons was always a huge risk. And unless there was some special talents who I thought was Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and Caleb Williams, I would not do it. So they have not. And in Malik Neighbors, they absolutely found their guy. His first year was exceptional. Unfortunately, he missed a couple of games with, I think it was concussion. But despite really poor quarterback play, he was over 100 receptions, over 1,200 yards. Only touchdown production was not necessarily elite, but this guy absolutely showed that he is an alpha wide receiver and has potential to be top 5 in this league, despite this position being really stacked up. So huge win for the Giants by drafting Malik Neighbors, and I would say a huge win for me. Obviously, it's just one season, so we will see what happens in the future. But for right now, and I think for the future, Malik Neighbors is an exceptional player. And finally, they have a number one wide receiver that's like worth of the title, like for the first time since like 2017 OBJ, maybe 2018, I'm not sure. Time flies really a lot, especially after like COVID really kind of messed up with my perception of time in this like 2020, 2021, and etc. But let's go past that and check out their second selection. It was Tyler Nubin, and I wasn't like super high on this pick. And as of right now, I should be eating my words, because despite being thrown out there in the youngest or one of the youngest secondary in the league, being like almost expected to fill shoes of Xavier McKinney, who had exceptional year with the Packers and was one of the 2 stars that left Giants to go to play for, let's say, better teams, at least for right now. That was not really an easy ask. But Tyler delivered. Like, he played with his hair on fire, though he doesn't really have that much of hair, so maybe that's the reason why. Especially his run defense was really something that you kind of want every rookie QB to the QB safety to just kind of replicate, and because like he really played hard. Also, what you have just seen, like despite we are not talking about Jaguars and Panthers, my kids decided to listen very closely, so sometimes you might hear them or even see them. But let's continue. And we go to Andrew Phillips. I mean, we can talk about Malik Neighbors, but this was one hell of a find for them. Andrew Phillips, S70 pick, absolutely shined in his rookie season. The only... I would say not even a negative thing, but I can't say disappointment. The only thing that you could be asking more of him is they did not really play him outside. He played slot, which like even gives this like more weight in terms of this is probably a harder position to like transition from college to the pro. So the fact that he has done it on such a high level is very, very good for the Giants. But in terms of how much valuable the position is, I would always say that outside corner is slightly more valuable than a slot guy. And especially with the Giants, they don't really have very good outside wide cornerbacks. So the fact that they probably have not found in him their outside guy is like little knock on him, because he's probably just going to be one of the best slot guys in the league. So I still was slightly lower than I should have been on him, and he was absolutely a stud. The next guy, Theo Johnson. I feel like this is where my perception, everybody's perception, and even his performances was kind of like aligned. Nobody expected him to be a star. It was thought that he's a bit of a reach, but they kind of were in a situation that their retirement kind of drove them a little bit of what they wanted to do with their tight end room. So, like, okay, we need a tight end. And he was like good enough, for a 4th round pick. You find a good enough guy that plays hard, but I don't really see the huge upside for him. But for backup tight end, possibly even your number 2 for upcoming 3 years on cheap deal, you definitely could have made worse picks there. Tyron Chasey, again, one of the picks I wasn't as high on, and he kind of made me eat my own words, though I'm still not super sold on Tyron Chasey. Though being a Seahawks fan, I had to enjoy one of his best games against my guys. But I still feel like, despite having 1,000 yards as a rookie, I think the numbers are a bit they don't tell the whole picture for sure here, and I don't think he necessarily played that great as the numbers would suggest. He was still very good for a rookie running back, don't get me wrong, but I would not put him into anything better than decent starter as of right now. I did not see necessarily a great player in the making. I saw a very solid one. I'm not going to take that away from him for sure. But if Giants are we found a replacement for Saquon Barkley, hell no. Or at least I don't see that. I mean, obviously not now. Obviously the discrepancy is huge, but even in terms of his potential, I don't necessarily have that on his bingo card for the future. In terms of other guys, Darius Masau got some playing time, delivered decent enough performance. As a backup linebacker, again, quite a nice pickup. And one player that I found beside the draft, Elijah Chatman, kind of for undrafted defensive tackle, he looked pretty solid to me. And he is not the guy you want next to Dexter Lawrence, which is, beside wide receiver and beside QB and beside offensive line. There's a lot of problems, and was a lot of problems with the Giants across the last couple of years. But one of the almost biggest crimes is that you have a generational player in Dexter Lawrence, and he is unutilized in terms of there is not a great second guy to help him in terms of interior of the defensive line, and that would use the fact pretty much everyone needs to focus on Dexter and take it as his advantage. So Elijah Chatman is not that, but as a rotational piece, you can definitely do much worse, and it's a good find by this front office. So that was the draft. As you can see, I had a lot of positive spin on what they've done with the draft. Now let's take a look at what their offense and then defense did in 2024. We will start the rundown of positional groups with the QBs. We have to start with Daniel Jones, who was cut slightly over halfway of the point of the season. He will later, spoiler alert, win an award for flop for the Giants, but I would still hold at least some bit of a protection hand over Daniel Jones, because it's not his fault that the management was kind of stupid enough to pay him massive contract that was like $45 million a year. Like, good for him. He set up his family, he set up his life. But like, that was always a stupidity on the front of his part. And it was like, well, if we've invested highly in him in draft and he had really good last season, so let's go. No, like, everybody was saying it at that point, including me. This is not a good thing to do. Daniel Jones, if anything, is a QB that should be at best on Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith type of deal. 3 years, 100 millions. That's what he should have gotten. And if you arrive to this point, okay, it didn't work out. He is a bridge QB. He is still, I would say, somewhere between 30 and 35 best QB in the league. I don't think I feel like the perception of him is much more skewed towards negative because of that contract, rather than that he's actually like a shit player. Obviously his highlight or low light against the Eagles, where he kind of trips himself instead of scoring a touchdown after a huge run, also like doesn't add to his great perception amongst like general public. But overall, I don't think he's like a shit QB that some people or there is definitely a lot of people online that would have this perception of him, which I don't think is true. Should he be a starter? No. I think he's at best a bridge QB, and at this point probably one of the lower tiers. I would take like guys like Jacoby Brissett, Gardner Minshew over him, but it doesn't mean that he cannot be especially like a very good backup for you. That if you put one game, 2 game out there, he's not going to mess up your season, and he might even scrape a win for you. So I don't think his career is over by any stretch of imagination, but his chance of like redeeming himself like the similar way like Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith earn their bigger contracts, and probably Sam Darnold will too, later in their career, after not being like super impressive in their early days in NFL. I don't think that's necessary in Daniel Jones. I feel like with him, the floor is actually reasonably high, but also the ceiling is not really anywhere near guys like Baker Mayfield and company. So that's Daniel Jones. I feel like he's going to end up as a backup on one of the better teams in the league, because he should be reasonably cheap. Those teams do understand they have aspiration to make a Super Bowl push. And in that case, in case you have your QB going down for 2 or 3 games, you need someone to step in and just not sunk your season. And I think Daniel Jones is the man for the job. In terms of other QBs, Tommy DeVito, Tommy Cutlets. I like the story. I like the guy. I definitely hope that he carves himself a career, especially here in Giants uniform. If they could sign him for like next 10 years, we will give you $2.5 million a year. You will be our QB number 3. You will be a positive guy in the locker room. Everything that, really nice story. Yeah, let's go for it. I hope that's what awaits him in the future. But he is not a starter, and he never will be. There is just lack of traits, lack of quality for this position. With Drew Lock, there are still traits, but yeah, it just from Denver to Seattle to the Giants, it's never like worked out to the situation that anybody would be like, yeah, we feel like this guy just needs like better coaching or better this or better that, and he's actually going to be a great starter in the league. I still feel like he will end up as backup somewhere, and like could earn himself a nice chunk of money in the future in terms of backup QB money, but his days as like talented potential prospect that maybe he will be something, I think are kind of numbered. It's kind of a shame for the Giants that he actually had one of his best games, perhaps his best game of the career this year, because it costed them number 1 pick. Yeah, Drew, that's kind of the worst case scenario, because you haven't found an answer in him, but also he cost you number 1 pick. Let's move to running backs room. I had higher expectations from Devin Singletary. I wouldn't say, like, despite his numbers, I wouldn't say that he was necessarily outplayed by Tyron Tracy, though it's kind of logical for them to give Tyron more touches because he could be for them in the future. In terms of Devin Singletary, he actually signed a nice contract for him because he is up for the payroll for next 2 years, 6.25 and 6.5 million. But there is a way out of that contract that will probably happen after the season. I think for now they will probably go with this duo, but I don't think neither of them showed enough that they cannot be like in the hunt for some of the better running backs in this year's class. Let's move towards wide receivers. We already talked about Malik Neighbors, and I honestly cannot praise him enough. I think he is probably, as of right now, I mean, it's hard to have Brian Thomas, you have Vlad McConkey, you obviously still have Marvin Harrison. So there's a lot of guys that, kind of burst into the scene, much even better than expected, especially in like Thomas and McConkey. And perhaps in Marvin Harrison, it wasn't as smooth as you expected. But I would still say probably Malik Neighbors is the top wide receiver for me from that class as of right now. And I'm really happy for the Giants to have him, because now the situation for any QB that will come, and I definitely think there will be a QB, because, well, let's face it, they don't have anyone under contract, though Tommy DeVito is a restricted free agent, so he will be back almost for sure, for cheap. We'll have a nice weapon with Malik Neighbors, and I cannot wait to see him thrive with better quarterback play. You also got something quite interesting from Wandale Robinson in his third year of his career. So kind of, really breaking out as like, yeah, I am one of the guys that you want to count on. And this year he's going to playing for a nice chunk of money that he can actually earn himself, because I think if he repeats somewhere close to the season, almost 100 receptions, not necessarily that many yards, he was not necessarily like super huge weapon after catch. But if he repeats this number, we are talking about the guy that's going to take 8 figures per year, because he will demand that, and I feel like he will earn it. He's still a highly drafted prospect, and he just needs to show what he showed this season repeatedly in next year. Then you have Darius Slayton, kind of veteran presence that is being faded out from this team. I was not sure if I'm seeing right when I checked what his projected salary is for next year, because he's out of contract, and there's a suggestion around 15 or 16 millions a year, and I'm like, what? Who in their right mind would pay that for Darius Slayton? I mean, honestly, he signed, what was it, 2-year, 12 million contract 2 years ago with the Giants, and I think he lived up to that contract. But after those 2 years, someone suggesting 16 million, what kind of live? If that's the case, Giants, let him go find out that money on free agent market. If someone gives it to him, it's going to be even worse than Gabe Davis for the Jaguars last year in terms of this is absolutely not worth the money. I'm not saying that Slayton is unplayable player. I don't want to slide him too much, but I think he is good enough to be your number 3. If he's your number 2, you can live with that, but you definitely don't want to overpay on a player of his quality, at least in my opinion. His receptions this year, he had almost as many, not drops, but balls that he did not catch on half of so many targets compared to Wandale Robinson. That's pretty huge. The fact is, Giants don't really have depth behind this, because Jalen Hyatt, still in his second season, hasn't shown pretty much anything. He definitely seems like a third-round bust for them. And that might be a reason why you are okay, we want Darius Slayton back, but I'm saying hell no for the money. if there is a reasonable contract, then this wide receiver room with Slayton is like, okay, so Malik Neighbors is our star. Vander Robinson, we believe he can be our very good two, or good enough to. Slayton, veteran, and we hope from Hyatt we get something. Okay, this room can work, but you should not overpay to have Darius Leonard into this room. In terms of tight ends, they counted on several young guys, whether it's Theo Johnson, Daniel Bellinger, or Greg Dulcich, all of them on their rookie deals. But I would say the best player out of them was veteran and Chris Manhertz, especially in terms of run blocking and even pass blocking. Overall, like, his blocking was very efficient. He just showed why he is there. He absolutely knows his role. Kind of reminds me of like Mercedes Lewis in his later years of his career. Hey guys, I'm just here to be a presence. I'm here to be like a physical menace to help you guys. You get your catches. I will get to run over players and just help this team. I definitely hope that he's back on some kind of cheap deal, because this room doesn't necessarily have like an emerging superstars in terms of a tight end. So I would rather have some of the snaps going to an aging veteran who provides me with some really decent floor in terms of run blocking. Now let's shift towards the offensive line, which we will start with their biggest star there, Andrew Thomas. And for me, I cannot call him elite anymore. And it might be harsh for I don't think Andrew will take this personally, but it might seem harsh, but let's face it, like, he is kind of too much injury prone at this point of his career. And the thing is, I am not usually, or even here, I don't want to hold the injuries against him, but you need to understand that when you are coming with an injury, I don't think you are able to like 100% trust your body, because you are always, especially if it's like repeated injuries. It's been several times that you had like season-ending injuries, like way too early into the season. And like the process of coming back and really like trusting yourself that, I can do what I was used to do with my body. I think it shows on his play that he is not 100% comfortable and could be like worried about getting injured. Unfortunately, he usually does. And, I still think he is one hell of a left tackle, absolutely guy that you kill for to have as someone that protects your blind side, but not for me elite anymore. Still an absolutely amazing player. They finally got something from Evan Neal, who was definitely taunted as one of the biggest busts of this management, because with 7th pick overall, they so far got really nothing from him. This year, that at least got something. There was definitely this huge physical presence that should have been his floor. That okay, maybe his pass protection is not going to be really smooth from the beginning, but at least his size and even his mentality will be, I will run everything and anything in front of me and help this running game. So at least we've seen that, but still there's a long way to go before you can consider him a player you can count on, and he's playing full role in his 4th year in the league. Though I will tone it out, moving him to guard, we've seen huge players, Mekhi Becton, probably the best example on this year's Super Bowl, Philadelphia Eagles, moving to a guard and really using that size to their advantage, and kind of their lackluster pass blocking to be less of a problem. But also you have to count on that the rest of the Eagles offensive line is kind of creme de la creme in terms of league. So that obviously is something to look at. But I feel like that could be an interesting future for Evan Neal. Preseason, they signed German Illuminor as kind of this veteran presence that will always be solid. Nothing special, but you kind of absolutely know what you are getting from him. You also get the versatility because he can play both tackle and guard. And he absolutely delivered on that promise. He was nothing special, but he was a solid piece that you can count on to like not lose your games. Like, is he a starter that you are praying for? No, but is he a starter that you are okay with and you kind of want on your team because of his demeanor, because of his ability to play almost every single game, and because of his possibility of really changing positions? Hell yes. Kudos to Chairman Illuminor. In terms of rest of this offensive line, now we look more inside. John Michael Schmidt in his second year, I cannot say like he made huge strides in terms of where you would want him to be right now, but it was definitely like day and night compared to his first season, in which we like looked borderline unplayable. So as of right now, you have a starting center that you can work with, and you hope that he will make another steps forward to a guy you were hoping to get when you drafted him 57 overall just 2 years ago. Next to them, John Runyan. I would say that the process with him was kind of similar to Jamin Illuminor, but you are getting someone that is younger by 3 years, but also not as versatile in terms of he cannot play tackle, but he can play both guards. And you kind of go with this approach like we don't know what we are getting from Evan Neal, so we need a lot of versatile players here that are kind of decent. You did that with John Runyan. He gave you, I would say, slightly under what his payroll would suggest it, but still not a problem, I would say. Who was, I would say, I mean, I don't want to say it, but was like really like surprisingly nice presence for them was Greg Van Roten, another veteran that they've signed for like similar reasons to why they signed John Runyan and Chairman Illuminor, though he was signed for a much cheaper deal as he's almost 35 years old right now. So he was signed to 1 year, $2 million type of a deal. And unlike the other guys, he was able to be out there for pretty much every snap in the season and just grind it out day in, day night. Again, he's not something special, he will not be something special, but as the veteran presence that will actually give you a lot of really good snaps, Greg Van Roten was really what like the doctor prescribes, as they say. I mean, you can kind of sense the team, like there's a lot of guys that kind of should be on the edge of starters, and here they are, kind of all of them are starters. So, if you are asking why this offensive line is kind of, that's the reason why. Like you have several guys who, as your weakest links, you are absolutely okay with them, but as kind of your standard, you are not anywhere near where you actually want to be, or when you would call this a strength of your team. In terms of backups, I somehow have Greg here as well, but Joshua Azuru, Aaron Steeney, some young players. I mean, Aaron Steeney was on his last year of the contract, I think. Yeah. Oh, he's actually 31. He looks younger than I thought. So kind of like a journeyman veteran. Joshua Azuru, another player that they've drafted and kind of hoped for better results because he was a third round pick. So far, not so good. So like, you cannot say that the Giants have not invested in this O-line. It just didn't pan out so far. Like Joshua Azuru, John Michael Schmidt, Evan Neal, like even Andrew Thomas, though he's like it's not that long ago. Like it seems like, because he's obviously already on his second contract, but he was drafted in 2020, and he's still only 26. So they have made a lot of effort in terms of draft, and a lot of like draft capital went into this to have such a like mediocre O-line is kind of a problem, obviously. But that was Giants' offense. Now let's take a look at their defense. And we will start with the guys on edge. Preseason started. They've traded for Brian Burns. like they paid a hefty price, not only to get him, but also to pay him, because you are paying around 40 million a year for him, which like is a bit of an overpay. I think he's more of a guy that, on a fair market, he should be worth like 25 millions in my opinion a year. But given the price tag in terms of what you went and got him for, it was second round to Carolina Panthers, as well as he's still kind of young, 27, and also the perspective that he is going to be a guy that Kayvon Thibodeau can model his career and actually develop into a star, or at least really good player that they need him to be, because him and Evan Neal were kind of two picks, 5th and 7th overall, that this new regime needed to pan out, and so far Evan Neal was a bust, and Kayvon Thibodeau, despite some really solid sack numbers, was not really like a great player. And Brian Burns was thought or perceived to be really good mentor for Tibbs. And I would say that like both parts of like Brian Burns actually delivering in terms of his own performance, but even Tibbs looking better, though not necessarily like monumentally better as you would hope for, was delivered during the season. With Aziz Ojulari, another guy that you hoped that it would pan out much better. Again, spent second round on him. In his 4 years here, he struggled with injuries and just never developed into anything more than a guy that, at best is a nice rotational piece, but no one you actually want to be starting. And he's already 27, so he was drafted as an old prospect. He is the same age as Brian Burns, just to give you a perspective. So if it happened till now, it probably won't happen in terms of what you hoped Aziz's potential was, but as your third guy into rotation, he's very capable, and I think a lot of teams will actually seek out his services. Let's check out like how much should market value him. 7.66 million. Now that's a number I can stand behind. Fair number for still reasonably young and good pass rusher, like in terms of his role as like number 3 for your edge group. Now let's go inside, and we already talked about Sexy Dexy. This dude is a monster. He's, in my opinion, unquestionably the best player that Giants have. And it's just such a shame that there is not a second great player next to him in terms of that interior. Obviously, Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau do gain some things from Dexter's sheer presence, especially when they are lined next to him. But I just really miss that really good interior piece next to him, because he didn't have that for his entire career here with Giants. The fact that you have him on 4 year, 87 millions, I think is an absolute bargain, which is crazy that you were able to like sign him to that contract, because I honestly feel like this is the guy that you pay 30 millions plus and you do it without the blink in your eye. Like, I think he is top 3 at worst on his position and absolute anchor of this team, rock solid player. And I just hope that we will finally see him like unleashed to his absolute full potential, because not only that he creates space for others, but perhaps if someone else in the interior will demand, hey, I'm here, you actually have to pay attention to me also. I think Dex could have monster season, and he could definitely be Defensive Player of the Year next season. You've heard it here first, I hope. Rakim Nunez-Roches, I mean, like aging veteran, like, yeah, not really much to say. Like, you have not signed him to a huge contract. He delivered kind of exactly what you expect out of him. That's the problem. Like, he should be your third best player here, ideally. but not your second. Like that's just such a waste of Dexter's talent. Nothing against Rakim, but he is what he is, and he could be on the roster. You might save some money by cutting him. I think it all depends how much they will invest in this position. In terms of backups, we already talked about Elijah Chapman. I really like this find in terms of undrafted players. So I would not be absolutely against him getting an opportunity to be like a third player behind Dexter Lawrence and probably someone new. So that makes cutting Rakim Nunez-Roches more likely, because I actually feel like you want some snaps to go much more towards Elijah Chapman than to him, because as of right now I don't think there's like a massive difference, and with Elijah you can have something for the future. It doesn't really say that much for DJ Davidson. Like his frame just was exposed, especially in run defense. Now let's talk about linebacker room, and if there's anything I do not expect them to touch too much, it is this position, because in Bobby Okereke you have, I would say, borderline top 10 linebacker in the league. He is a leader of not only this group but of this team. You can see his captaincy, and like he's pretty much kind of everything you want from linebacker. Unless you have like Roquan Smith, then you will always say, okay, Bobby is my number one, I'm happy. Like there's very few linebackers that are on different level than Bobby Okereke, and if you have Bobby, you are like that. And I think he absolutely deserves his contract, which is not cheap. It's around $13 million a year. Next to him, you have under contract Micah McFadden. It's the year where he fights for his new contract. I don't really feel like he is going to like go on a strike, but it might be even reasonable for the Giants to actually lock him up before the season, because I do believe that he will shine in 2025. Again, next to Bobby Okereke, behind this defensive line. This could be a really good spot for him to like prove that he is very good number 2 linebacker, and I think his price will skyrocket after the season. So even tying him up before the season could be a smart move for this front office. Behind them, you have Darius Musa, whom you've drafted and actually given a nice playing time as your linebacker 3, absolutely a guy that you are happy to develop. In terms of Isaiah Simmons, if he is willing to, re-sign for a cheap, I'm okay with that. But he's not living up to his first round pedigree. They've done some interesting things with him, but it just never clicked to the point that you would be like, okay, Isaiah, we want you to be a starter. Though I still do expect some teams taking a punt on him, because like his athletic profile is still like, you kind of will see him get at least, I think, 2 opportunities in the league before everybody is going to be like, okay, he's just not going to burst into the scene, because he still can. He's only 26 and he has the body type to really be a dominant presence on the field if things click. It hasn't so far, but with linebackers it takes a time, sometimes 5-6 years, and they can still emerge. We've seen, for example, Devin Bush play really nice in his 6th year after being abysmal for pretty much a huge part of his career. So who says Isaiah Simmons cannot do the same? But for right now, I don't think he should earn like a big contract. Anything more than 4 or 5 millions is, to me, an overpay. And I don't necessarily expect him to be back with Giants, especially when you look at this linebacker room and you have pretty much how you want to set it up. You have your leader, really top guy in Bobby Okereke. You have McFadden as your very good number 2, and your young developmental guy in Darius Musa, who kind of allows you to, treat McFadden like, okay, maybe we don't pay you, and we will just move to Musa next offseason. Though I would actually be much more of a fan. Let's just sign McFadden for, I don't know, 3 year, 20 million, and have this room actually being kind of low-key a strength of this team. And now it's time to talk about the secondary, which is, there is really not a lot of pleasant conversation around these guys. This was a room that entered the year as probably the worst secondary in the league. And it was all due to, well, these guys are all like 25 years and 26 years and younger. And we just hope that they will develop together, kind of the same approach that, for example, Chicago went. Really young secondary that we've invested some picks into, and we hope they will develop together. Well, it did not happen to a degree that you would probably hope for. In terms of the safety room, like in Jason Pinnock, this was a year where he was playing for his contract. Especially when targeted, he was just being burned by pretty much anyone. So like nowhere he earns like a big contract, but if he wants to resign for like 1 year prove-it deal on 3-4 millions, or even something like 2 years, 10 to 12 millions, he could be forfeit. Next to him, Tyler Nubin, I think he was kind of beside Adoree Jackson, the lone bright spot of the secondary, blind spot, because like I said, he filled the shoes of Xavier McKinney quite nicely. There was not like a glaring weakness in his play, though like his coverage was definitely the worst part of what he was showing out there. But you are of a strong belief that he could be one of the foundational pieces for the secondary in the future. Slight surprise was Dane Belton, guy that was drafted in the 4th round, and up to this point really didn't show much. But I mean, this year he kind of outplayed even Jason Pinnock a bit. He was at least not getting so much credit, and in terms of passing game. And you still have him for next season, so as your backup, I would definitely like to have him. But overall, this room and the whole secondary, when you consider that there was not necessarily like huge improvements, I think it screams bring at least one experience option here that can give this guy some type of guideline, some types of figure that they can measure themselves up to, or even like trying to beat, let's be better than the old man, and develop with that here. And I think like a position of a safety, especially with how the league doesn't necessarily value them super highly, and there is a lot of good experienced safeties out there really being signed on 1 year very cheap type of deals, whether we talking Quandre Diggs, Justin Simmons, Kevin Byard, blah blah blah. There's a lot of guys that I would like to see in this room help to develop, guys like Nubin and Belton, and not necessarily like being there for like 3 or 4 years, but giving this room some kind of let's say mature experience. Now we move to corners, and with Drew Phillips, we already talked about him with the draft. He absolutely stood out, transitioning so well towards playing slot. As I feel like there has not been more than 5 slots out there that had a better season than Andrew Phillips. That's really impressive for a rookie. Next to him, Adoree Jackson, veteran signing for 1 year, really signed a cheap deal, and kind of played to a level that was not necessarily expected. I think he surprised a lot of people with the level of performance that he delivered on the field. I did not expect this, but it's not like he is a guy that you necessarily want to build upon. But if he is willing to resign for some kind of cheap deal as your ideally as your backup, again, more of a mentor type of guy that, goes out there for special packages or goes if one of the younger guys is not driving, then Adoree Jackson is absolutely a really fine option, and he might have earned himself a nice chunk of money somewhere else, perhaps 3-4 millions, something like that. I think could be worth his services. And now let's talk about those young guys that you hope to take huge leaps. Let's start with Deonte Banks. Second year was not really that much better than his first one. I mean, like, the most positive thing that you can say about Deonte Banks is he's still on this roster. He's not as much of a flop as Emmanuel Forbes was for Washington, but like one more year like that, and I'm not sure I will be able to say the same thing, because it just was not good enough. He was getting beaten left and right. And in this division, where you have CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott, Terry McLaurin and Jaden Daniels, and Jalen Hurts plus AJ Brown, it's always going to be a tough ask. So, he needs to improve significantly if Giants should even think about picking up a 50 option, or even count with him for the future, because so far nothing good came from him. Slightly better and much lower drafted prospect, though. Prospect that they have spent the third round pick on, Cordell Flott. Decent, but with these young guys, you definitely do hope that they will move this direction, and he's this way, and he's you can see some progress with his game, and if it doesn't justify being, let's say, happy with this room. And again, he is going to be in his final year of his rookie deal. He is going to be playing for a contract, and for a big one. I'm not sure that they have enough money, and even should be spending too much of a capital on this group, in terms of we need to make sure that this is not a problem. But for those two guys especially, I don't feel like both of them are going to get as much playing time as they did this season. I do expect Giants to invest at least into one player here. So it's going to be a battle, because NFL life is unforgiving, and especially with Deonte Banks, you kind of wasted first 2 years of your NFL career. And if you want to be out there, there is going to be hopefully a proper battle for that position. But overall, that secondary is just not what you hoped for, and the strides that they make forward were mostly from absolutely new guys like Tyler Nubin and Andrew Phillips, rather than for what you already have within this group. With that being said, it's time to give you guys some awards. In terms of draft hit, it might seem crazy not to have Mike Neighbors here, but finding potentially Pro Bowl corner in the third round is, I would say, as much valuable as finding an exceptional wide receiver with the number 6 pick. Both of these guys are an absolute hits. Let's make that clear. But I feel like with Malik, he justifiably so gets a lot of hype and a lot of praise. So really, when I was thinking, this is probably for value a better pick, but in terms of player, Malik is there. So I really like both of these guys. Let's give some more praise to a guy that doesn't necessarily get as much as the other guy. So sorry, Malik Neighbors, it was very close for me. But Andrew Phillips, absolute stud, and for him, even coming into that young secondary, and I feel like he looked most mature out there. He looked most like a leader, and despite like play around him being quite mediocre, and even like late in the year, a lot of team just didn't show that much of an effort, which was actually worrying for the Giants. I didn't see that with Andrew Phillips at all in neither part of his season, though he did play only just above half of the snaps. With draft blunder, it was really hard to find one because I really feel like the draft was really kind of redeeming quality and perhaps something that saved a job for both GM and QB. Head coach. But I will have to go with Theo Johnson because don't necessarily that he didn't live up to his grades and his draft pedigree, but it's like there has been a lot of difference makers even in their first year behind these guys, and especially for like a cornerback position that you clearly like. That's just like, I don't think it's necessarily unfair, but he probably was the worst pick out of this bunch, which tells you a lot about this draft for the Giants. In terms of the cornerstone of this franchise, it would be quite easy to say Dexter Lawrence, and I feel like he's definitely the best player on this roster, but they had him for several years on this roster, and the team did not necessarily achieve that much. With Malik Neighbors, I feel like he is a guy that, one, could attract some really interesting QBs because finally they have someone to throw a ball into, and also if perhaps Brian Dable gets fired or things that don't work out in the season, there will still be at least him that you are like interested in. Why are you taking this job? So despite Dexter Lawrence being the best player, I think who actually like brings the most attractiveness to this roster, it's Malik Neighbors. So like, if you want to give this to Dexter Lawrence, I definitely would have not said no. But it's also an award for 2024 season, and in there Dexter Lawrence only played like half of the game, so that's also what like swinged here towards Malik Neighbors. In terms of an unsung hero, Greg Van Roten won this award for me. And why? Well, he was out there. He was battling from week 1 to week 18, like from bitter beginning to the bitter end. He was there. He was the presence. Like, you might say, like, he is 35. Maybe this was his final year. Like, does he really have that much to play for? And like a lot of players would probably like didn't give as much F as Greg did, because he was just professional from day one, from snap 1 to snap 1121, and I feel like that's where this reward really tries to show you these type of players that you don't hear that much in terms of newspapers. You will not find them in terms of earning the big bucks, but they are the unsung heroes of their teams. So I hope that Greg will find another place for him if he wants to continue with his career, because I feel like this was a year to appreciate him. In terms of flop, we cannot go pretty much anywhere else than to Daniel Jones, because despite me still believing that he is not as bad as as a lot of people try to paint him, this was a year for Daniel to show us that he could be a starter in the league, could be a future for this franchise, though perhaps not the future that the Giants fans want, but a guy that they can count on at least to be 20th, 25th best QB in the league. And he didn't deliver on that. And like, did he had the best complementary pieces around him? No, but I feel like he kind of had the best players around him that he had during this time span with the Giants. Also, like just with one exception, like you were liking obviously Saquon Barkley, but it's not like Saquon was not without injuries in his years with the Giants, or that he was like everybody knows how good Saquon is, right? But with the quality of the offensive line of the Giants, he could not necessarily show off and what he showed with the Eagles. So yeah, you obviously were missing a top running back this season, but you also, for the first time, I feel like you had a top wide receiver in my neighbor. So this was your chance, Danielle. You did not deliver. Wish you the best, but unfortunately this, let's say, anti-award goes to you. With that being said, we kind of relieved all of 24. Now let's do some of the summary of where this franchise is at. And then we go to a potential roster for 2025. So we start with Brian Daboll as a head coach. I lowered his grade to B-, and it pains me because I do like Brian Daboll a lot. I think he is very good offensive mind and kind of a coach that is slightly even underappreciated. But what really made me lower this grade and kind of question how good he actually is was, I would say, really lack of effort from this team. I would say like from week 13, when I was looking at those games, like beside that one when Drew Lock went crazy, but even in the game, like defense was like, are we even trying? That was kind of like, did he lost the locker room? Because at some cases it looked like that. So besides obviously not very good results, this is another like huge potential question mark for me. Like how much do they actually stand behind him? Because like you've seen, for example, with Dallas, when Dak Prescott went down, they were really in bad position. Micah Parsons injury, CD Lamb playing like with like one hand, but you could sense that the players really want to keep Mike McCarthy in the locker room as their head coach. I didn't sense that with the Giants. That worries me. In terms of how their 2024 has gone, to me it's a D, and there is really like just one saving grace beside the number 3 pick, which is still valuable, and that's the rookie class, because they had one of the best drafts, I would say, out there. I don't really feel like they made a blunder. They made several value picks and really set themselves up very well with this draft. So that's absolute redeeming quality for this franchise, because like really good drafts can really push you into another sphere in terms of future years. In terms of QB, I cannot go anywhere but a 3- is because, well, they don't have a QB on their roster. So yeah, okay, like I cannot. I mean, I would still like choose this situation over what the Browns have, for example. But yeah, like this is kind of self-explanatory. In terms of hot seat, I don't think like I have anyone higher than 8, which I do have Brian Daboll. And originally I was at 7, but really that part about the locker room. And really, unlike from like Mike McCarthy, I didn't necessarily hear any players like standing up, yeah, Brian is doing a really good job, we want him here, etc., etc. And obviously, like kind of bad results for the Giants in last 2 seasons. Really, I feel like makes him one of the guys that is really close to being fired, though I think he will find a new job within a heartbeat if he wants, because as an offensive coordinator, I feel like there is like at least 10 teams right now that they would sign him immediately. In terms of finances, I gave them a plus. The reason why it's just a plus is that they don't necessarily have too much free money for this year. Like I know 50 millions sounds like a lot, but when you consider, or 45, but when you consider around 10 millions or 15 millions goes just towards draft picks, and it doesn't necessarily like gives you a lot of financial muscles, especially when you are lacking quarterback position. So, for example, if they would want to go and fight for Sam Darnold, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, it's pretty much, we kind of have money perhaps for them, but then for no one else. What makes these situations very nice is they actually have a lot of cap space, or decent amount for next year, because this year they also have almost 30 million in terms of dead cap that they don't necessarily have in 2026. They have zero there, and also with their best asset, which is, I feel like, their 2024 draft guys being on their rookie deals for next 3 years. That's a huge plus for financial situations. Well, I already kind of said it. Their biggest strength of this team, I feel like, I could have gone for defensive line, of course, because Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, that's a huge power. But honestly, for the franchise, I think it's actually this draft, because this could be one of the drafts that alter the road ahead of this franchise. Because if they didn't have as good of a draft as they did, they would be in really, really bad situation. But then we go to division, and from their point of view, this division sucks, man. I mean, the worst team from their perspective is Dallas, and Dallas still has Dak Prescott, Micah Parsons, and CeeDee Lamb. I'm not saying that they will win the Super Bowl. I feel like Dallas is actually like really fucked in terms of, do we have a possibility to win a Super Bowl, because they have committed to 3 players, around half their salary cap. 2 of them are absolute elites, but unfortunately the one that is playing the most crucial position in terms of Dak Prescott, I think it's like borderline top 10. And if it didn't happen with him on a rookie deal, or then with Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb on rookie deals, what should change when we pay these guys $80 million more a season? So with that being said, I feel like Dallas is kind of the team that, like similar to Steelers. I really see almost no upside towards them winning a Super Bowl. But if you have them in your division, like doing anything better than 1-1 against them is very, very freaking tough. Then you have Super Bowl champs in Eagles. Good luck with that. And obviously you have conference finalists with Washington, with Jaden Daniels, after one of the best rookie seasons ever by a QB, or like by a QB, it's probably the best rookie season ever, and by any player almost there as well. So good freaking luck with that. That's it for kind of 2024 rundown and overall like kind of the big picture. Now let's take a look at how this lineup can look like in upcoming season. We will start with O-line and QB. I feel like actually in terms of O-line, I don't see them making huge investments. I actually do expect this to be starting 5, because you can again try to invest here in terms of draft, but you've already done that. You need to figure out what you have actually in Evan Neal and what you have in John Michael Schmidt. You have two veterans that you've signed to be your bandage players, and like just a year ago they did that, so you are not necessarily like looking to replace them year after that. So I really think this is going to be their starting 5. Is it something you should be happy about? No, but it should not scare you as a QB. In terms of QB, I don't know who is going to be. I would actually be one for drafting up in this spot that the Giants are in. I feel like one of the things that having such a strong rookie class allows you is to be a little more tradesy with your other picks. So I would, if I'm a Giants GM and head coach, and my job is definitely on the line, I do try to give myself some more of a ramp by drafting QB And truth to be told, I don't want Shedeur here because I don't think you want to draft Shedeur with number 3 pick. I don't think he's worth that, in my opinion. So if I cannot land experienced QB in free agency, and from what is right now out there, there's a huge talk about Matthew Stafford potentially be here. So that would definitely be a really good option, though the financial situation would mean, well, we have Matthew Stafford in, we kind of don't have money for anyone else, and we still have to push some money down the line, but he would definitely fix this problem. I do feel like Matthew Stafford is like a top 7 QB, in my opinion, in the league. But if you are unable to do that, I don't necessarily think you should pursue Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, or Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold is going to ask for longer contract with a lot of money. And I'm not saying he is Daniel Jones, but there is definitely potential for him to just not live up to what he did with the Vikings, just as Daniel Jones did not live up to his one really good season when Brian Daboll arrived. You know, especially here when you don't have Justin Jefferson, you don't have Jordan Addison, you don't have really good tackles, you don't have like a top head coach in Kevin O'Connell. So I would not go for Sam Darnold here. Also, like he already has been in New York, so I'm not sure like this would be a destination for him. And in terms of like veteran QBs, they would be my choice if I'm like the owner of this franchise. It's like, yeah, I want 1 year type of a deal with someone like Russell Wilson, someone like Aaron Rodgers even potentially. And I kind of want to be able to draft my QB next year because I think that's a better class to do it. In the meantime, I might take a punt on like 3rd or 4th round player even this year. And also it should give me like much better performance this season, and I kind of want to appease the fans from our shitty results. So that would be my choice. But as a GM and as a head coach, it doesn't necessarily like benefit you that much as drafting a rookie. And I think for Brian Daboll, it's kind of fair to give him a chance with great quarterback prospect. And I only see one really top in this draft, that's Cam Ward. And I feel like there is really good chance for the Giants to trade up to number 1 spot and take Cam Ward with the first pick if they don't work Matthew Stafford out. And I think the price should be next year first, obviously this year the 3rd pick, and probably something like 3rd round. And with how good I've drafted, or Giants drafted this year, I think that's a price you can stomach. And I do really expect them to do so unless they are able to land Matthew Stafford. And it also makes sense for the Titans, at least in my opinion. In terms of their skilled players, I don't think they will necessarily touch running backs room, because I feel like Singletary is like decent option to be your starter, and Tracy to be like really rotating with him, and hopefully he can develop into a really nice player. With this draft, you definitely do get yourself some backups there, but I would expect them that this is their starting 2. In terms of tight ends, with several young guys, I really would like them to bring someone like Chris Manhertz back to be their like quasi starter, because I really feel like the snaps would spread around between him and the young guys. I thought about here being a place for David Njoku or Kyle Pitts. These possibilities, because I feel like both of them could be traded for and could be like really interesting options, but I think you do that if you go for Cam Ward. So I will not be surprised if we will see someone let's say more of a name here, and they would take a punt on them. But my route would be, I want an experienced veteran to give me floor, and I hope one of my young guys can develop into full-time starter position that I can really trust. In terms of wide receivers, I feel like as of right now they are missing a 2, but I wouldn't mind counting on Vandal Robinson as my number 2 guy. And really, this is to me, again, if I am going for Cam Ward, I want to actually bring some better weapon here and like try to go for someone like a good starter type of a player that he can play with. So he's going to be obviously a more expensive option. If I'm able to land Matthew Stafford, I'm absolutely okay with Wendell Robinson being my number 2, and I'm most likely trying to draft my number 3 guy. Obviously, all of that behind Malik Neighbors as my true wide receiver number 1. In terms of backups, I'm really a huge fan of Greg Van Roten. I think they should definitely bring him back. I would not be shocked if they would even started him, but with commitment that they have to Runyan and Illuminor, with Evan Neal as like the commitment is more in terms of draft pedigree, I would expect them to have him on the bench for the first game unless something crazy happens. We already talked about Theo Johnson as one of those guys next to Bellinger and Dulcich that you hope they can overcome a guy like Manhurts. I would not be shocked if they went like, okay, we are not even bringing veteran here, but it would not be what I would do. In terms of Jalen Hyatt, is he good enough to be a number 4 wide receiver? Probably not, but you are kind of invested in that, and you have other holes that you need to fill that like you can live with still giving him a chance. I am absolutely like 100% sure that they should bring Tommy DeVito back because he's going to be cheap as hell with being a restricted free agent. And like, okay, I said he should be like a QB3, so he actually should not be on this on the screen, but I just couldn't resist putting him here. And with backup tackles and running backs, it's probably rooms that I would address via draft, but not necessarily spending super huge there. So there was offensive lineup for the offense. Hopefully that lineup doesn't offend you. Now let's talk about defense. Here, I think that in a case that you land Matthew Stafford, there is a chance to draft Mason Graham, which I would take, but I would really like to take him like with like 5th pick overall rather than 3rd. So if I'm going Mason Graham route, I would like to get some picks for that. But even if I don't feel like I can get those compensations and still get Mason Graham, I'm absolutely happy to draft him as number 3. It's a bit of a reach, maybe, but he is the best defensive tackle in this class, and it's not close. And I just want to see it, man. I really want to see what Dexter Lawrence next to this guy can do. And like kind of having this experienced veteran star player next to young superstar potential in the making would be recipe for success. And this could legit be one of the best defensive lines in the league. As we talked, linebacker room I think is absolutely set. I will be shocked if Bobby Okereke and Micah McFadden are not their starters for next year. Like obviously there could be happen like some types of injury or some off-field stuff, but beside that, I absolutely feel like this is their starting duo. In terms of secondary, there are several spots that I left out because I think and hope that they will fill it out with either special talents, because if you are still at number 3 and you already have your QB, Travis Hunter could be there, because I do expect Cam Ward to go number 1 or Abdul Carter and potentially Cam Ward to go number 2. So Travis Hunter, I think, could be out there, and he could be actually a really nice option in terms of he fills out the outside corner role for you as best as pretty much any potential draft pick could, and he gives you something to your offense as well. For him to be like really perfect fit for the Giants, I would love them to make a move for either Kyle Pitts or David Njoku. So in that case, like you have stable top 2 targets in Joku, and hopefully Pitts can rejuvenate his career, and Neighbors, obviously, so either Pitts and Joku. You have your third option in Wanda Robinson, and on several plays you actually boost this room by putting Travis Hunter in there. So I actually would really like that fit for the Giants. It's also the weird thing is, like, the best player in the draft doesn't fit them. That's Abdul Carter, because they already have their edge guys. But pretty much anyone else is really nice fit for what they need. And I think it's going to be pretty telling how much they invest into certain rooms. Like what their pick is going to be, like what they will do, whether they will try to trade up or not. I think they are one of the teams that I think post free agency we will know almost for sure what they will do with their pick. In terms of safety, like I said, I would absolutely love them to bring some veteran presence here. I think there's a lot of guys out there that you don't have to spend premium bucks to get in. And, if suddenly in this room there's Travis Hunter, there is, for example, Quandre Diggs next to Tyler Nubin, Cornell Flott, Deontay Banks is suddenly like the odd man out. You have them battle for the second outside spot with Cornell Flott. You have super talented Andrew Phillips as your slot. Suddenly secondary from, kind of a paper mache, really weakness of this team could suddenly be, I dare to say, strength, or at least something you are not worried about. So I feel like you actually have really nice path how to kind of naturally really put this room in very good spot. Because obviously, the drafts of Drew Phillips and Tyler Nubin do help that situation quite heavily. In terms of backups, I talked about Elijah Shetman a lot. I feel like he deserves to be on that edge of like third or fourth rotational piece for that interior room. Darius Masau, Dane Belton, again, we talk about them. Some really nice finds by this front office that you don't want them to start, but you see enough potential in them that you are not looking for veterans for that room. You can count that they will deliver some decent snaps when you put them out there, and perhaps in the future they could be your starters. With the rest of the positions, I feel like especially in terms of edge and defensive tackles, you kind of fill it out with like useful older players, depending on how much you actually invest into defensive tackle and potentially draft Mason Graham. So that was that for the Giants. It was kind of interesting episode for me because I really feel like they are in very interesting situation. Unlike a lot of teams, they don't have like a lot of money pushed down the line, but also they have severe contracts that are already in. They kind of have their stars, yet they are not very good. So I'm intrigued to see where they can go, and I think this is going to be a huge offseason for them, and they need to kind of redo the success of their draft class if in a year or two we can talk about Giants and actually feel some fright when you play them, though. As I said, I'm a Seahawks fan and they actually beat us on our field. So yeah, that sucks. That cost us playoff. Thank you, Giants. Okay, that was it from me. We will be soon back with the fourth episode that will be about New England Patriots. It's going to be a good one. For, I would say, first time, it's going to be a positive one. So make sure you subscribe for that, and you will check that one in the future. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for watching, and have a nice day. Bye bye.